views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not represent or reflect the official policy or position of the Take a Paycheck Foundation and podcast. All information shared is from personal experiences and does not constitute medical advice. We do not take responsibility for any statements expressed during the podcast. Take a Paycheck does not endorse any products or services. Any said products or services mentioned on this podcast may not be suitable for you or your condition. Please consult with your physician if you have medical questions, as it may pertain to your condition.
Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's episode on Take a Paycheck. I'm so excited to have Allie joining me today. So hi Allie, can you give me a brief introduction about yourself? Tell me a little bit about your education, your hobbies, your future plan, and what is your diagnosis?
Hi, my name is Allie. I am a junior at Wagner College in New York. I study arts administration with a focus in theater. Some of my hobbies include I really love to do theater in any aspect, whether it's performing or being on the production team in some aspect. And I love just exploring the city and spending time with my friends. And I love spreading awareness for arthritis. And I am diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis.
Cool. I actually have only had one other guest with psoriatic arthritis, so I'm so excited to talk more about what it is all about. I don't experience it myself, but it is so important to raise awareness about it. Thanks so much for coming on to the podcast. So when were you diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis?
I was diagnosed when I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school.
And that's a really odd time, right? You classify as a youth or a teenager, but you're supposed to transition in a month, but I know in the States that might not even be the case. So in Canada, we transition care. So from pediatric care, we go to adult care at 18. Sometimes there are transition clinics in Canada. So I'm wondering what your life was like at 17 years old. How did your symptoms start and what type of doctors were you seeing?
Yeah, so for me, because I was 17, I know sometimes people are diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, and even at a younger age, and even when they are diagnosed with juvenile arthritis at a young age, they that diagnosis carries through with them through adulthood. But because I was so close to being 18, I was diagnosed with adult psoriatic arthritis, and I was seeing an adult rheumatologist at the time. Okay. But yeah, so my symptoms actually started when I was 8 years old. I got really sick one day with the flu or something. I don't really remember what it was, but my knees flared up. They got super red, super swollen. And because my mom and my brother both also have psoriatic arthritis, she knew exactly what the signs were. And she was like, I think you have it as well. And she sent me to my pediatrician, who sent me to an orthopedic doctor. And then they did knee x-rays and stuff, and they didn't really find anything. So they sent me to a rheumatologist, and I went to a rheumatologist at CHOP, and they actually diagnosed me with something called RND, which is not even, the term now is called complex regional pain syndrome, which is basically chronic pain that develops after some sort of trauma, so a surgery or a car accident or something like that, which never happened to me, it was very weird that I was diagnosed with that. From there, I was sent to physical therapy and occupational therapy, which didn't help. And my mom just knew in her heart that that was not the right diagnosis. So we kind of went back to square one, and I kind of just went on and lived with the pain, and then until around high school when it kind of got really bad again, and we started that process again and trying to get the proper diagnosis.
Would you say that it took you approximately 10 years to get a diagnosis?
Yep.
That's insane. So did you move to different doctors? I know you kind of mentioned a couple of them, but was it different hospitals, different types of doctors? What was that process specifically like?
So I really only searched to find a diagnosis those 2 points in my life, when I was 8 and when I was in high school. So the first time I did it, it was all pediatrician based. So it was all through Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is also what my pediatrician was through. And then when I was older, I was looking at more adult routes. My pediatrician recommended me to go see an orthopedic. So they sent me to physical therapy there as well.
You mentioned that your brother and your mom have psoriatic arthritis. So how old is your brother and like when was he diagnosed?
So my brother now is in his 30s. He's like 33, and he was diagnosed, I want to say he was a teenager like me. I want to say maybe he was a little younger than I was. I was very little when he was diagnosed. But he showed more of, because we both have psoriatic arthritis, he showed more of the psoriasis part of it. So that's why he was able to get a better diagnosis, because he would flare up like on his skin. But again, it was kind of the same story where my mom, because my mom has it, she was diagnosed as an adult, I believe.
In a way, having your family support and for them to be so understanding because they live with it, did that make things easier on you?
Oh, 100%. My mom has been my biggest advocate ever since I was born. I've kind of always had random little medical things, and she has always fought for me to get the right treatment. If she felt something was off, she fought to make sure I got that test done, or fought to make sure that they would check me for this or that, especially when I was younger and my voice wasn't always enough. And it's funny because sometimes I joke that I'm mad at her for giving me the arthritis gene, but it's really, I'm so thankful I have somebody like her to guide me through this and to be there, and somebody to talk to you about it and fully understands what's going on because she lives through it too.
Yeah, I see what you mean though. Like it's like, oh, you gave me that gene. And I feel like a lot of people in families like they always joke around like, oh, you gave me this and you gave me that, right? At the end of the day, you don't want anyone to kind of deal with this pain or these symptoms, but you know, it happens. I just find it very like interesting how multiple people in your family have kind of the same thing as you.
It was really funny, like trying to get a diagnosis because autoimmune arthritis is genetic. Of course, when I went and saw those doctors, of course I told them about my family history. You would think that they would be like, oh, maybe she really does have this. Like you would think it would have been an easier diagnosis process, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, you're right. So they obviously have to ask you for family history every single time you have an appointment. And you
Yeah.
had mentioned that your brother and your mom has psoriatic arthritis, but the fact that it was like another diagnosis was given and like it wasn't even considered sort of thing.
Yeah, no, there was one time I was literally like at my pediatrician and I saw like one of the nurse practitioners, and my mom like fully got in a fight with her because she was trying to be like, she doesn't have arthritis, she doesn't have arthritis. And my mom's like, I know my child, I know what arthritis is, she has it. And because when they're trying to diagnose arthritis, they try to they do labs and they test for that rheumatoid factor,
Mhm.
and that wasn't showing in my labs because I don't have rheumatoid arthritis. So they were like, she's like, obviously she like, look at the lab, she doesn't have it, we can check it again, but it's not coming up. And my mom's like, but look at her, like her knees are swollen, she is crying in pain, how are you going to help her?
That's probably so frustrating for your mom, especially because she experiences it and it just feels like it's happening like kind of all over again. And she's like
Yes,
living that with you.
me, but she did it with my brother too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like she like relived it a couple of times in that sense.
Yeah.
So you met your rheumatologist at 17 years old?
Yes, and she was my mom's rheumatologist as well, so that's how I was able to get in with her. Thankfully.
How long did it take that rheumatologist that you eventually got to diagnose you?
My first appointment, right then and there, I was diagnosed. And it was, you should have seen the look on my rheumatologist's face. And I was telling her all about all my history and all the experiences I've been through with other doctors and all the misdiagnosis. And she, like, the whole time, she's just like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Like, you went through that. She's like, it's ridiculous how there's not enough arthritis awareness in the world. And something she told me during that appointment that will always stick with me is that arthritis is only talked about for one day in medical school, which is so shocking to me. But at the same time, it makes so much sense with all the experience I've went through. And it really makes me wish that it was talked more, because then it would lead to less misdiagnosis.
Even in current education, aside from medical school, like for example, like undergrad or like high school science. Like we only talk about cancer and the cell cycle. There's so much more when it comes to science and biology and disease. We need to raise equal amount of awareness. So when you were diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, did your mom actually tell you what it kind of was prior to it? Like, did you already have an idea, or was it now that you had to learn about what it was yourself? For me specifically, my parents learned about my condition more than I did at first. And then later on, a couple years later, I got interested in learning about it. But because you have those members in your family that do have it, did you already know a lot about it, that it wasn't like I have to now start reading things about it and Googling things?
I knew a good amount about it because, again, like my mom has lived through it. Like I used to go to her infusions with her when I was younger. I kind of already had like an idea of what it was. Obviously, I also did some more research because, again, I was so young and wanted to get a better grasp on what it was as well. And especially like as I got older and as the condition kind of kept progressing, I wanted to learn a little bit more about it as well. And especially through my account too, I do a lot more research now so I can talk about it correctly.
Once you finally received your diagnosis, then you kind of move on to a treatment plan. What were the symptoms that you were going through at that point, and what did your doctor kind of advise you in terms of medications?
So when I was diagnosed, I was first put on Plaquenil, which was through a pill form. That was so long ago. It really didn't do anything. So that was kind of like a quick moment of my life with the Plaquenil. And then right then and there, I was switched to Enbrel, which was my first biologic I was on, that, and my first injectable as well. And with biologics, one of the big side effects is it can increase your risk of infection. So I was very like educated on that as well, and also had to get labs to make sure everything was good in my body for me to take these biologics. I was on Enbrel for about maybe a little over 6 months, and while I was on it, I definitely noticed an increase of I was sick a lot more often. I had a couple bad sinus infections, maybe like every couple months, that had to be treated with antibiotics. And then the beginning of my senior year of high school, I got a really bad urinary tract infection, which ended up developing into toxic shock syndrome.
How did you even find out that that's what you had?
So when I was diagnosed with the UTI, it wasn't like your normal UTI. It was a pretty severe one. I had a fever and I was feeling really sick with it as well. And when I was being treated with it, I was getting worse instead of better, until the point where I was so weak I couldn't even dress myself. And like I was having dreams where I was fighting for my life because I was so weak. And I also developed a rash on myself. So from there, I was sent to the hospital, obviously, and I was given every single test imaginable in the book because they had no idea what was going on with me, but they knew figure it out really soon because I was really, really sick. So they brought in a infectious disease doctor from a pediatric hospital in Delaware to come in. My blood culture came back positive for streptococcus. And from there, he was able to diagnose me with the toxic shock syndrome.
Okay. And how would you describe the toxic shock syndrome for viewers that may not know what that is?
Toxic shock syndrome is a rare but life-threatening condition, and it's caused by bacteria getting into the body and releasing harmful toxins. It's that thing that you see on the tampon boxes that to look out for. But again, you don't really think that's going to happen to you because it's really rare. And it happened to me, and it didn't even happen from a tampon. Like when I was diagnosed with it, like when he was like, yeah, you have toxic shock syndrome, I was like, that's not possible. Like I thought you get it from a tampon. He's like, no, you can get it from other things as well. But yeah, so it's a really, really scary condition that you have to treat right away to get all those harmful toxins out of you.
And what was the treatment process for that? And then also you stopped your arthritis medication. So what medication was next?
So I was treated with 3 antibiotics for the toxic shock syndrome that was given to me in the hospital. So I was in the hospital for about a week, and then I was sent home with an oral antibiotic. But once when I got sent home, I was home for maybe 4 days. And then I started getting really sick again and developed a really bad rash. And what happened to me was I unfortunately developed a drug allergic reaction to one of the antibiotics I was on called Rett syndrome. And basically what it was just a bad allergic reaction, but it also makes you really, really sick and also starts to affect your organs. So once again, I was back in the hospital for another week. And because of all of that, my doctor and I decided to take a break from arthritis medication so I can let my body heal, because my body at that point has really went through a lot of trauma, and to also figure out what was the next best treatment, because obviously we didn't want to go back to those TNF blockers that can really cause serious infections.
What was your next step in terms of medication journey? You did take some time to think about it with your rheumatologist because you don't want to jump into things really quickly.
The next step for me and my doctor, we tried to stay away from biologics as a whole, just to really not have to hopefully worry about infection. So I was between, she suggested I take either Otezla, which is it's a pill form of medication, or methotrexate. And we decided to go with the Otezla and to stay away from the methotrexate because I was starting to lose my hair at that point from all the trauma that my body went through. So I went on to Otezla, and I was on that for about a year and a half. And because it's not a biologic, I didn't even have to get routine labs to make sure that everything was good. And it was doing really well for a year and a half until eventually it wasn't working anymore, which unfortunately happens sometimes with arthritis treatment. It can be working one day, and then one day it just kind of doesn't really work for you anymore, and then you have to keep going and find the next treatment. So from there, I went on to Tremfya, which is a biologic, but it's not a TNF blocker, so it's not as intense, and it doesn't weaken your immune system as much as those TNF blockers. But that didn't really work for me as well. So then from there, I took Cosentyx, which is what I'm currently on now. And I've been on that for a couple months, but unfortunately, it's kind of not really doing much for me anymore. So I'm in the process now of switching to Orencia, which I will be getting through an IV, and it will be my first form of IV treatment.
And how are you feeling about that?
Like every time I go through a treatment plan, or I'm about to start a new treatment plan, I always get really nervous because of what happened with me a couple years ago. Like I'm always like, what if it causes this? What if I get a really bad reaction to it? Even though it's not a TNF blocker, I'm still like, those things always run in my head. But I'm trying to be as hopeful as I can. I decided to go with this one because I've never had an infusion treatment before. I've done injections, I've done oral pills, but I've never done IVs. So I wanted to see what it was like doing that, and to see maybe that would help a little bit better. But yeah, sometimes it can get a little tiring going back and forth between medication.
That's how it is, the whole trial and error aspect of it.
Yeah, even if you find the one, a couple years from now, like it might just stop working, and then you're back to square one. So it's always that you're always in that trial and error process, unfortunately, with this.
Would you be able to tell me the symptoms that are being treated right now with your medication?
Right now, the joints that affect me the most are my knees, my fingers, and like my hands, my neck, and also my lower back and like my SI joints. The medication is supposed to help reduce inflammation and to hopefully make that pain better. I also, because I have psoriatic arthritis, I do have a little bit of psoriasis in my scalp, as well as I have two like very tiny minimal patches on my fingers that flare up sometimes. What's been nice about the Cosentyx is it's actually helped clear up my psoriasis a lot, which is nice. So that's also what it's supposed to be doing as well. It's also supposed to help keep that psoriasis as well, and as well as keeping my joints not as inflamed, and to hopefully prevent flare-ups.
To me, it's interesting because juvenile arthritis is you just have those joints that are impacted. And on top of that, for you, you also have the psoriasis aspect of it. So that's just like dealing with two things. You were diagnosed at a time where people are transitioning out of high school and into university. So how did your condition specifically affect your college life?
It's been hard for sure. There's been many days where I wish I could just be like my friends. I wish I could be normal. I wish I could do things like they do to the ability that they can. I try my best not to let it get the best of me. I'm trying to I mean, I only have 4 years in college. I'm trying to enjoy it as much as I can and just learn. And again, like learning your limits is a huge, huge part of it as well. And learning to be able to balance it all is also another big part of it to make sure that I can do things to the best I can.
Did you ever happen to get accommodations during college or high school?
While I was in high school, my it really wasn't that bad of where to the point where I needed accommodations. It wasn't really until last year where my arthritis got to that point. I had a really bad flare up last year that I feel like I never really bounced back from. But so I had a 504 in high school for my ADHD that moved with me to college. And luckily, because I had that, I was able to add some accommodations for my arthritis on there. But even if you don't have a 504, I highly recommend if you're in college like me, reaching out to your disability center and just setting up a meeting with them, talking about your condition and some of the things you're experiencing. They can totally help you. If they feel that a 504 is best, they can help you that process to get that set up, or they can even just have a little bit of accommodation set in place for you as well. One accommodation I have is because my campus is on a hill, it's very hard to walk through sometimes. And it's unfortunately, I go to like a very old liberal arts school, so it's not very accessible as well. So if there's days where I'm like really flaring or if I feel like I can't really walk, luckily I have accommodation where I have public safety come and they in their golf carts and they can transport me to different buildings or to like different classes and stuff on the days when I need it, which is really nice.
Wow, that's great because I feel like some people have transportation to get from class to class. I know I had that option as well, but also American colleges are way bigger than like Canadian universities.
Yeah. See,
Like
my college, how big is your college?
literally like 1 kilometer.
Oh, really? Yeah, my college is really small too. Like we only have like 1,500 people. Like my college is much smaller than what my high school was. My high school was 4,000 kids and this one's only
Okay, my university is definitely bigger than that.
yeah, yeah. And my school's it's a very small, like private liberal arts
Oh,
school.
okay. I think like to the bigger like states schools, mine is
Mhm.
definitely smaller. So and also it snows here a lot, and I know in New York it snows too.
Because my school is on a hill,
On the
my
hill.
freshman year, my dorm sat at the bottom of a hill. And when it would snow, they literally like sometimes would have like ropes that help you like get up the hill in the snow and stuff.
Oh my gosh, this sounds like
Yeah.
a whole adventure. You know, college was definitely a little bit more challenging than high school, especially because you kind of grew into your diagnosis as well. So, how did you balance your social life, your academic life, and your arthritis at the same time?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest thing is I try to get in as much rest as I can, because I really need to do that in order to be able to do all these things. The fatigue is something that I do struggle with a lot, unfortunately as well. So I try to get at least like one nap in during the day, to be able to do all those things. But at the same time, trying to balance it out with classes and extracurriculars and everything. A big thing to also balance all that out is also how I schedule my classes as well. I try to break it up so I have periods of rest throughout the day, especially if I'm doing like a dance class too. I try to have at least like a break where I had like 2 class periods so I have that time to rest and rejuvenate.
Yeah, I think it's so important to pick like the schedule properly. It's interesting because I always thought that I liked morning classes. I don't know,
Yeah.
I just always thought I did. And then I started getting into that now and I'm like, I really don't like this
Oh
because
yeah, no. Like I also can't have my classes be like 8 a.m. Like I can't do the 8 a.m. class because I won't get up and I because also like when you get up in the morning you're more stiff and your body needs to kind of wake up and get into itself. And so those earlier classes are really like not for me because I need that time to get up and like get ready. I need that extra time to really get my joints and like my body moving.
yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't actually know that for myself. I was like, oh yeah, I just want to get over all my classes, like get it all over with as quick as possible.
Yeah, 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 totally.
Yeah, so then when it came to like 8:30 labs, and I'm like, oh my God, this is torture because I was in so much pain in the morning
Yeah.
last semester. But sometimes it just doesn't fit with your schedule and you just have to
But
like
you just have to
deal
do
with
it. Yeah.
it. Things that I could take a bit later, like, I'm okay with 10 a.m. or like 11 a.m., but like
Like,
8:30 just really kills.
no, I can't. Yeah. And I don't know if your school does this, but at my school, because I'm registered with the Disability Center, I get priority on registration for classes. I get to go before everybody else, which is also really nice because then I can get those classes that work best for me.
No, we literally don't get that, but we need to get that. I'm
Yeah,
literally
no, it like I didn't think I needed it at first, like that extra like to get in earlier, but now like I'm so thankful I have it because then I can avoid those earlier classes and get in to the ones that work best for me.
I actually didn't know that that existed, but I will now bring it up.
It was great freshman year when like all of my friends were like the end of the line and I was like, all right, I got all my classes.
A lot of the times it ends up just being super full, like the website crashes and everyone's going on at the same time and
Oh yeah. Yeah,
don't
yeah,
get
yeah.
what you want. But that's a great suggestion. I feel like people that don't even know about this, like I did not know about this, that's something
Yeah.
that you can talk to your accommodation services about that to help.
No, I highly, highly recommend.
How did you tell your college friends or high school friends that you've had this new diagnosis? And, sometimes you're not able to go out with them all the time. How did that work?
For me, especially with like COVID and everything, when I came in, which kind of helped, my freshman year was like right in like the smack dab of COVID. So like we really couldn't do anything, which was nice in like in the sense that like I really was able to take things easy. But in like telling them, I've always been super honest with them and just been like, this is something I have because at this point I've had it for a couple years now. So I'm used to like having it and it being a part of me, even because it's kind of always been a part of me. And in a way, I feel like it's easier now that I have this diagnosis than when I was younger. Because I would just be like, I have this knee pain, I have trouble doing this, I have trouble doing that, but I don't really know why. So bear with me, I guess. But now I can be like, I have this and this causes X, Y, and Z, and which will also cause me one day to like feel like this certain days. But again, just being as honest and upfront with them has been really helpful because then they understand it as well and they know how to like help me in that as well.
I'm glad you had really good experiences. Did you ever have anyone kind of not understand or have some sort of negative interaction with them when you did say it, or has it always just been very positive?
Like, I've never had like any negative interactions at all, but definitely have dealt with not understanding what it is. I mean, of course, most people really don't understand what it is. So it's been a lot of just like sitting down and explaining and what's really nice is like my friends are very, very understanding of it all and do like to ask those questions and that's also kind of why I made my arthritis account too, as a way to just kind of like educate my friends and family on what it is so they have a better understanding of what I'm going through and which has also been really helpful for my friends as well because then like they'll see us and be like, "Oh, okay, so that's why you do that." Or like, "Oh, that's why that happens sometimes."
And you kind of brought the transition right in. So you created an Instagram account called Ali.arthritis, which is dedicated to posting content arthritis related. When did you start this account? And I know why you started it, but maybe you can give us a more in-depth story if there is
Yeah,
one.
of course. Yeah, so I started it this past May, coincidentally during Arthritis Awareness Month. But at that point, I was just getting really sick of having arthritis and having to go through all the motions. Like you do this every day, but every now and then you're really tired of living with it. And again, you just like you wish you could be like everybody else. And I also just like was feeling kind of alone in it all too because I was at school, so I wasn't really with my mom as well, like the only other person I know that understands it. So I also wanted to do it as a way to connect with other people in the chronic illness community just to find more people like me to be able to talk about it with people who also understand what it's like, which is what happened, which has been awesome.
What has been the most rewarding part about this whole experience, starting this Instagram account? I found it really hard to actually start posting on Instagram. Like, I posted and then I was just hoping no one would look at it because I was like, oh, please, I don't want you to know I have arthritis. But after a while, you kind of realize that, like, you are not only helping yourself advocate, but there's maybe one more person who needed you to post that there. How did your journey work in that sense? Like, did you ever have any hesitations or doubts about even starting to post content?
I definitely a little bit, because again, it's always that little bit of like, I don't know, like I want people not so much know that I have this, but associate me with like this disability, because like you still like you're still yourself, nothing has changed about you. It's just like you don't want people to think like any less of you because you have this, or you know what, like you know exactly what I mean. So that was always like a little bit a part of it. But again, like at the end like of the day, like the best part about it is exactly what you were saying. Like I feel that so much, like seeing other people and having people be able to share it and make their journey easier, and have like, and even just like people like who might not have known something about arthritis that they, or something that they go through, like them able to learn, like understand and learn from that as well, has just been so rewarding. And especially so many people like who have reached out to me as well, like saying that they love the account, or again, like being able to be like, oh, I was able to share this. And it's just been so nice to have somebody else who understands and like, and be able to spread awareness for it, the younger generation as well, because that's really who I want to do this for. Because again, like there's not many, I know me personally, I don't know a lot of people like in our generation with arthritis. So I really want to reach out to them as well.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I find that now, because I'm so confident about it, people actually talk about it. I was hanging out with one of my clubs at school, some of the members there, and yeah, they see me repost it on my story. Oh, check out this episode, things like that. We were going around the table and we were just talking about what our hobbies are and stuff, and people will literally answer for me. They'll be like, oh, Natasha's hobbies like podcasting, and they'll spread awareness about it. I'm like, wow, you're really just spreading awareness about my podcast. That's really nice of them. I was like, wow, you actually pay attention. So people actually pay attention.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And especially like when I first started, like having my friends like share my content too, or sharing other people's contents. It's like how to help like your friends that are living with chronic illness and things like that. Or like, and then like they would be reposting it and be like, I'm so proud of my friend for doing this, like has also just been so awesome too.
Some of my friends tell their other friends, hey, Natasha, my friend's so cool. She has this like podcast. She's doing this stuff for people with arthritis. And when I meet them, they're like, you're the person who's doing all this. So now it's not something I'm afraid of talking about, because people are learning about it. And that's what matters the most. People that are more aware that, you know, arthritis exists.
About a month ago, I did this thing with my friends where I made a quiz on stuff that was on my account about arthritis. I
saw this.
And it like the results were so funny. But also like at the same time you could tell like some of their logic to answering the questions. Like I was like, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I'm like, you're wrong, but okay, I can see that you're like lit, like you kind of understand the concept, but still some of them were just like, oh my gosh. Like my one friend was like, what medicine caused me to have toxic shock syndrome? And my one friend was like looking at the options, and he was like, Otezla. Well, Otezla's a commercial one, like ones that I see in commercials. So like I don't think it's that one. And I'm like, they're all like, because I don't know if they have this where you are, but like in the US, like the medicine commercials like are like all over TV with like for all the treatments, and it's like the like side effects include this, that like, so they all like associate these medications with like these commercials. But so he was like, yeah, that's a commercial one, so I don't think it's that one. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I saw that. Was it like a reel or something that you made?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting and entertaining for me to watch, like just to like look at people's thought process.
Yeah, because I also have another friend, my really good friend. He's a physician assistant major, so he's kind of learning a little bit about this stuff. Like he actually just learned about like the different types of biologics and stuff. And his process to like answering it was like too scientific, where I was like, what are you doing? I appreciate the really trying to think about this, but you don't have to think too much on this. Like,
Yeah, and I will actually link that down below if people are interested in checking out the video. It's actually,
oh yeah, no, you should. It's really funny.
maybe people can make their own quizzes for their friends too.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend. Like, it's so funny to see like how your friends are, like see how much your friends like pay attention, but also like see how their thought process works on all of this.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I'd like to end off the podcast episode with an advice segment. So, what advice would you give to someone with arthritis who is feeling the fear of missing out?
Yeah, my biggest advice is to listen to your body and know your limits. And also, like I mentioned before, try to be more open with your friends about your arthritis so they can understand what you're going through, and so then they can help you through it too. Like being with my friends, it's just been the fact that like they know all this stuff about me. They're able to like I might be like, oh, I'm not really feeling going out tonight, and they're like, okay, like let's take a moment in. Or also like because I'm in the city all the time and I walk everywhere, they know to walk at my pace too. So again, just being open with them, I think, is also something that really helps.
Thank you so much, Ali, for joining me on today's podcast episode. We really had a deep conversation about your arthritis and the symptoms that you had nearly 10 years prior to getting your diagnosis. We discussed the type of medications you've been on and how that really impacted your body. And then you discussed your experience living in college and dealing with your arthritis, including how your friends supported you along the way. Last but not least, we talked about your Instagram account that you created to spread awareness about rheumatic diseases. Everyone like, comment, subscribe. Check out Ali's social media channels, which I'll link down below. I'll also link the reel down below for you to check out. Share this episode, stream it on other platforms, and I'll see everyone in 2 weeks on Take a Paycheck. Thank you so much, Ali. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can't hide, 'cause growing pains are keeping me there.